Welcome to How I Unfucked My Life. I'm your host, Christine DeGrazia, registered nurse and founder of Calm by Intention. On this show, we bridge the gap between mindset and physiology. We're combining the raw grit it takes to change your life with the clinical science it takes to regulate your nervous system, because it takes more than just mindset to calm a body in survival mode. Let's get into today's episode. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of How I Unfucked My Life. I'm your host Christine, and today we're talking about two words. Just two words. But don't let that fool you, because these two words have the ability to completely stop you from living your life. Use them enough and you will not do the things that you want to do. The things you should be doing. The things you were meant to be doing. And those two words are, I can't. When you say I can't, you are 100% putting up a wall and handing yourself an excuse. Because the truth is, there is a difference between a genuine inability to do something and a choice dressed up as a limitation. When you say, I can't eat healthy, I can't leave this relationship, I can't start over, I can't open this business, I can't cut this person out of my life, that's not I can't. What you're actually saying is, I choose not to. I choose not to eat healthy. I choose not to leave this relationship. I choose not to start over. And that changes everything. Because you're choosing not to, not because you can't, but because doing it is scarier than not doing it. The regret of not doing it, you don't have to face that until later, so you put it off. But it will come back. It always comes back. When you say I can't, you close the door and say it's not possible. When you say I choose not to, that's different. That's a choice. And you can always choose differently. Always. But change is scary. And it's easier to close that door with an I can't and call it impossible than to admit that you're choosing to stay where you are. And here's what I really want you to sit with for a second. If you're choosing to stay in a job that you hate, own it. If you're choosing not to leave, if you're choosing to stay in a relationship that doesn't serve you, own that. I choose not to go. There is no judgment here. You have your reasons. But when you say I can't, you're just pushing the blame onto something outside of yourself, something out of your control. And it's not out of your control. It is completely within your control. It is your choice. And here's why that matters. Saying I choose not to is actually more powerful than saying I can't, because it puts you back in the driver's seat and in control of your own life. I can't makes you a passenger. I choose not to makes you the one holding the wheel. And if you're holding the wheel, you can always choose to turn it. But sometimes staying where you are, in that pain, in that uncomfortableness, in that miserableness, is easier than turning the wheel or choosing something different, because that's going to be unknown. That's going to take more work, and it's easier just to stay where you are. So it's easier to go, yeah, you know what? I can't leave this relationship, or I can't leave this job. I have too many years in. No, you're choosing. And again, no judgment. It's okay. Just own it. Now let's talk about healing, because this is where I can't gets really dangerous. Healing requires you to give up your story. If you truly want to move forward, if you want to get past whatever situation or pain or experience that you're currently in or what's been holding you back, you're going to have to give up the story. And a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They need that wound to explain their life. They need it there so they can say, this is why I am the way I am. This is why I can't change. This is why I can't move forward. And I get it. I lived it. I had a mother who was not the best mother. God rest her soul. She was abusive, and there was never an I love you said in my home. And I could have taken that and I could have run with it. I could have said, this is my story. This is my limitation. This is why I can't break the cycle. But I chose not to do that. I went the complete opposite direction. I chose to break the cycle. I chose to love my children with everything that I have. I chose to be a different parent. But to do that, I had to give up the story. I had to change the way I thought. And I was okay with that because I don't want to be the victim. I don't want people to look at me and think poor her or, oh, it's a shame that she's like that. But it's because, no, it's not poor me. It's this happened to me. This is what I chose to do with it. And this is how I made my life better with it. Now, here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people are comfortable in their pain because it's familiar. That's why we stay in the relationship that doesn't serve us. That's why we stay in the jobs that suck. That's why we don't live our lives. It's easier to say I can't change. That's why I'm miserable than to say I'm choosing something different for myself. I'm choosing to step into the unfamiliar and see what happens. And look, I know what some of you are thinking. What if it's worse? What if I make a change and things get harder before they get better? Well, here's my answer to that. Hard and wrong are two different things. Something being difficult doesn't mean it's the wrong move. Growth is almost always uncomfortable before it becomes freedom. And staying stuck, that has its own kind of pain. It's just the kind that you've gotten so used to that you've stopped noticing it. If you truly want change, if you truly want to write a different story for yourself, then you have to be willing to drop the I can't. Because the second someone that I'm working with says I can't in response to one of my suggestions, it's done. I'm over. It's done. There's no way forward because if you're saying you can't, you're choosing to stay in your own miserable story. You're choosing to stay stuck. You're choosing a life you were not meant to live. And here's one more uncomfortable truth before I wrap this up. Sometimes the people around you need you to stay broken because it makes them feel better about their own lives. I've also dealt with this personally. I was in a relationship with someone who sabotaged me, and I didn't see it until long after it was over. I had a couple accomplishments while I was with them. They never once said, congratulations, never said, great job, never said, I'm proud of you, never told anyone. And when I came to them for advice on different aspects of my life, their advice wound up costing me more than if I'd figured it out alone. And that wasn't because they did their best and it just wasn't the best advice and failed. Looking back, I know it was intentional. But here's the thing. I survived it. I recognized it, and it'll never happen again. Because once you see it, you can't unsee it. And that awareness is its own kind of power. Not everyone who says they're in your corner actually is. Some people are quietly counting on your I can't to justify their own inability to move forward. So don't give them that. So, in closing, you don't have to be ready today. You don't have to flip every single I can't into I choose not to overnight. I'll be honest with you, I still catch myself doing it. You'll hear me say, I can't do reels. And I'll say that all the time. But is that the truth? No, it's not the truth. I can do reels. I have done reels. People actually like some of my reels. The truth is I choose not to do as many as I can because of how they make me feel. And owning that is uncomfortable. But that's mine to own, nobody else's, and I'm okay with it. So just try. Just for today, swap one I can't for one I choose not to. And notice how that lands in your body. Notice how owning your choice, even an uncomfortable one, feels different from hiding behind a limitation that was never real to begin with. Because here's the bottom line. If you're not changing your life, then you're choosing not to. And there's no judgment in that by any means. But own it. Call it what it is. Because the moment you do, the moment you take back that ownership and that power, then you take back the power to choose differently. And that is everything. Remember, the words we use are either the cage or the key. Now, if this episode hit home for you, please give it a like and share it with someone who you think needs to hear it. And hit subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Oh, and one more thing. I have a weekly newsletter where I go deeper on some topics, and just like this one, and I give you heads up on the podcasts, and I'll keep you in the loop on everything I've got coming up. The link for that to sign up is in the description. So come join us over there, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to How I Unfucked My Life. I know the work is heavy, but remember, you aren't just fighting your brain, you're learning to lead your body. You have the grit to change your mindset, and you have the biology to find your peace. And every choice you make is a step towards the life that you deserve. So stop arguing with where you've been and start deciding where you're going. See you next time.